For nearly 3,000 years, Odysseus has been trying to get home. He has survived war, monsters, temptation, and perhaps most dangerously, his own pride. Homer gave us that journey in verse, and Christopher Nolan gives it to us in IMAX. But beneath all that spectacle, is this still the story people have carried with them for centuries? And does the film understand what makes Odysseus worth following in the first place? Welcome to Frame and Fiction, the podcast where we read the books, watch the movies, and talk about what makes their stories work. I'm Gabe, and this is Nor, and today we're discussing Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, what it changes, what it preserves, and whether this enormous film captures the very human longing at the heart of Homer's epic. And of course, we're going to start with some spoiler-free review, and then we're going to move on into some spoilers after about probably 10 to 15 minutes or so. For those who don't know what the Odyssey is about, I'm sorry. I mean, you're a little late on the topic. I'm sure you probably read or at least learned about it in elementary school. Or no. That's high school. Sorry. Elementary school.
That's
super
really elevated.
Yeah. Hey. Did the dog break in? Oh, he's on the couch now. Either way, I'm really excited to talk about this. Last episode, or a few episodes ago, we talked about the book, The Odyssey. We liked it a lot, but of course we had some gripes with it. But we both watched the movie multiple times, I would say. Have you watched it multiple times?
I haven't. I haven't been able to book another IMAX showing in weeks. I'm trying.
That's tragic. Okay, I've seen it twice. I watched it again just a couple days ago in the 70mm IMAX, the glorious ultimate viewing. And I'm really excited to talk about it. But, Nor, general impressions. After reading the full book, what did you take away from Christopher Nolan's Odyssey? Did you, in general, like it? Did you think it did the book justice? Were you convinced by the changes it made? Or do you think something was missing?
I was a huge fan of that adaptation. I thought Christopher Nolan, who is one of my favorite directors, and honestly, one of the best ones working today, I think it's safe to say that. I think he did a fantastic job. I thought the angle in which he told the story was very interesting, and it actually enhanced the source material in ways that we haven't been able to do in like the 3,000 the 3,000 years that this book has been around. So just elevated the source material while making it an actual like visual spectacle that I think everybody's rushing to see. I mean, it's been sold out for weeks, at least where I'm at. I haven't been able to book another showing just because it's legitimately been selling out.
Yeah, exactly. And it is as epic as it would seem. I mean, it's an epic tale that Christopher Nolan uses his massive budget and master abilities to really bring to life. It feels just as grand as the book, which I think is really essential here. The book had this weight to it where it felt like this epic journey, and most directors I don't think would be able to fully bring that to screen. And one thing that really stood out to me in this movie in particular, without going into details here, is the tension that Nolan was able to really hold throughout the entire film until the very end. There's just this tight feeling in your chest. I mean, I had a similar sort of feeling in Oppenheimer, and it seems that he kind of ratcheted it up here. So this was great. I mean, just flat out incredible movie. The characters I thought the cast was excellent. Nobody really stood out as bad per se, and it was star-studded as you might come to expect with a Christopher Nolan film. I will mention that it was based off of specifically Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey, which, if you didn't see in our last episode, we talked a little bit about it. But Emily Wilson has been quite outspoken, condemning aspects of the film that she didn't like, which has been very fascinating to see. But then again, I mean, if you're a classicist who translated the Odyssey, I would hope that you would never be satisfied by a film adaptation because you're such an expert on the original. But she has not exactly been a huge fan. And it's interesting to see why. While the script, I think, is kind of pretty faithful to the text, at least as we read it, for the most part. There's a few things here or there that you have to take out because the book has so much jam-packed into it. On the whole, I think some of the alterations are more so in the messaging and in the lens of analysis, as some might say. It takes a different look at what makes Odysseus tick, and particularly some of the elements that we had trouble with when reading, specifically motivation. And I'm really excited to talk about that. So, Nor, I mean, maybe this is kind of a light question to ask. Maybe this is a softball question. But who is this movie actually for? Like, who would enjoy this? Is the expert on the Odyssey going to like this? Is your grandmother going to like this? Who is this actually for? Who is going to go and enjoy this film? Because it does have a nearly 3-hour runtime. It's not light work. It will take pretty much an entire afternoon to go see. So who is this movie actually created for?
This is for anyone who loves epic storytelling at its finest. It's for the movie fans, really. Seeing this movie on IMAX, 70 millimeter, seeing it on the biggest screen possible, the biggest screen that is accessible to you. I think at the same time, it's a really great movie that most people can watch and for the most part enjoy. That being said, it does assume that you know the basis of the story. It assumes quite a lot. While at the same time, it does explain some things in a very mainstream, slightly dumbed down way. Yeah. Specifically the Sousa's Law, which is not really a thing, but they bring it up a lot in like the most obvious, most basic way possible. But yeah, no, this is a movie that everybody that I know has been going to see. And these are people from all over the place with different interests. Some of them don't even watch movies. Some of them don't even read books. And for the most part, they come out of that theater huge fans, blown away, both by the spectacle and the storytelling. So, honestly, I think it's safe to say that this movie is for most people.
Yeah, I would agree. It is intended for public audiences. I think it's a very general sort of film. Kind of on what you said there, I think that to some degree he took Judeo-Christian morality ideas and injected that into Homer's Odyssey. Not in necessarily a way that was like counter to what the book initially was saying, but in a way that would allow, especially Western audiences, to easily comprehend some of the moral guidelines that was influencing the original tale. So, I mean, it's exactly what you said. It was dumbing down cultural norms, specifically with like welcoming people in, hospitality ideals as a mechanism for morality. And it placed that within a more modern context that people could understand of what was the specific term? It was like treat others as they would treat you, or as you would like to be treated, right?
Yeah, we've heard that one before. It's the
right?
golden rule.
Yeah, I went, I think I know this one. And not that it's counter, but it made it a lot more obvious, which I'm not going to lie, I thought was good. I thought that was a good change because frankly, I spotted it, but it wasn't so direct. And it is sort of the essential fulcrum, I guess, of the original story. It's what everything hinges on. And if you don't understand that, not a lot of it is going to make sense, especially some of what happens later on in the story. But that being said, some of the things that we predicted might be changed in our last episode were in fact changed. So if you already listened to that, I think you're going to be happy whenever you go watch it, or at least appreciate our analysis and what we thought a modern audience might prefer. But I'm not gonna lie, I don't know how else to talk about this without getting into spoilers. Do you have anything else? I mean, it was good. It was really, really good. It was an experience that you have to go see in theaters, and it seems like everybody's trying to.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it at least one time, go see it at least one time. Book it on IMAX. Pay that extra $10 or so. Mm-hmm. It is absolutely worth the experience. Yeah, do not bring your baby to the movie. They're not going to like it.
You know, yeah, I like my wife always brings, I think she has like the loop earplugs that she always, it dampens the audio a little bit. Let's just say it's good that she did. I believe that the loudest moment in cinema is in this film. And so just keep that in mind. If you hate loud noises, just be aware of that. Go into it expecting it to be loud because, like most Christopher Nolan films, it is quite loud. Same thing with the dialogue. The opposite, right? With the dialogue, it is sometimes hard to understand what they're saying. Not to the extent of a lot of other Nolan films, I felt, but there were a few moments. I watched it multiple times, and I still didn't catch all of the lines of dialogue. I didn't exactly know what they were saying, but I always knew what was happening, which I couldn't say for Tenet. I literally missed plot moments because I couldn't hear what they were saying. So it's not as bad as that, but the mix I think still could use a little tweaking. But I don't know. I'm just a guy. I'm not Christopher Nolan.
He's too cool. He gets a pass, I think.
He gets a pass. I agree. But okay,
Spoilers.
let's talk about some spoilers. I think first things first. How does this compare with the rest of Christopher Nolan's films? I know this isn't exactly a spoiler, but using whatever metric you like, talking about whatever you like, how does this compare to Inception or The Interstellar or Memento or Oppenheimer, for example? Like, where does this sort of rank?
It is honestly really hard to talk about like the best Christopher Nolan movie because they're all so good and they're all so different. But I think you can see a natural progression in his filmography. You see how he grows. Like from a technical perspective, each movie gets better and better than the previous one. In terms of like, does he stick the landing? Yes, he always sticks the landing. Even Tenet, which is the least popular one, I thought was great. And while I didn't really understand everything in that one, I thought the way it ties thematically at the end, it just hits right. And he always nails the endings. I compare this one a lot to not Interstellar, even though they both have a similar premise of trying to get back home. But I think it fits this new kind of I compare it to Oppenheimer. Even though they are very different movies, but they feel like they belong together. They feel like they fit a very natural progression. I don't know if that's because of the technical aspects or the type of a protagonist that they explored. Christopher Nolan has been at this point in his life, he seems very interested in very complicated men, and they make for great protagonists. And I don't know, I find that really fascinating, but I can't quite describe it.
I'd agree with you. I think they share a scale, even though they're about completely different things, right? Completely different styles of film, yet they're both so grand. They seem so weighty, so important, like such a larger story than the confines of a screen can allow for. And I agree with you. I think they do seem to fit together, partly because there's a lot of the same individuals who worked on them, so I kind of like want to put them together because they feel similar in that way. But you're right. They explore the interworld of a very specific individual, somebody who is in society's eyes put up for some reason, right? They're elevated to a position in which they wreak havoc on the world and regret it immensely. That's both characters, and they make some sort of decision that a lot of society would look at and say, well, that was necessary, or, well, you're so brilliant for that. You're clever for doing this thing. And yet at the same time, they live the rest of their life trying to unwind that tension. Now, I particularly liked the Odyssey because it's kind of similar to what I study in my professional life. So I was really attached to it in that sense because I thought it nailed a lot of things about the homecoming experience, which is what I study for history. And so I really loved that. But I don't know, The Dark Knight is so good. The Dark Knight is hard to beat. I also have a personal deep connection to Interstellar. I think it has my favorite moments in all of his filmography. Like, I mean, come on. He just there are certain moments in Interstellar. I don't want to spoil that movie here, but there are certain moments in that film that I think top everything he's ever made. Just in the raw emotion, and every time I watch a clip of it, it makes me want to weep. And that's not the case with everything. But Oppenheimer had some insane moments. I agree though. I think it would be a disservice to him and his professional career to rank them in any specific order. But I will say, without a doubt, without the shadow of a doubt, The Odyssey is definitely top 5. Definitely top 5.
Yeah.
Because he's made some excellent films, but wouldn't even hesitate to say that.
His filmography is so good. I'm just like thinking of all the movies he's made. Inception, The Prestige, Memento is amazing. That movie's genius, and they're all great for very different reasons. And it's just you're watching these movies and you know right away just how talented Christopher Nolan really is, and it's impressive, and it kind of makes you a little jealous. And it's incredible. It's incredible. He's very talented. I would say, while ranking them is really hard and a bit of a disservice to him, yes, The Odyssey is top 5. It might be top 3 for me.
Yeah.
In my head right now, the ones that I always think about: Interstellar, Oppenheimer, and now The Odyssey. And I think they intertwine and they interchange depending on where I'm at or what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. Now, getting into some deeper spoilers with the film and the book as well, obviously, we need to talk about some changes in particular. This film, this review, first and foremost, is about the translation from the book to the movie because we just read it. So it's not exactly us coming in blind, just watching the movie as it is. We're coming with a lot of baggage here. And so I first want to talk about how Christopher Nolan handles the gods and essentially like all mysticism within this world. The Olympians are obviously central to Homer's universe. It literally starts with them talking. They're very present. They are very real. Even in the descriptions, Homer describes how Athena pushed him to grab onto the rock so that he doesn't let go, and Odysseus isn't lost to the waves. It feels more like a dance with the gods rather than a battle against them. And this has a very different feeling. And so I just wanted to know, did you like that Christopher Nolan essentially diminishes the gods into these sort of silent creatures for the most part? Or were you a fan of silencing the divine in this setting?
I was a big fan, and I think I predicted this. I mean, it didn't take a genius to predict it, knowing Christopher Nolan, but I think we talked about this in the previous episode. I was very doubtful that he was going to include the gods as a presence, and I was very satisfied with the result. I think it paints a more accurate description or depiction of, the way the world works, especially back then. Yes, the gods play such a huge role, but they weren't like figures right next to them at all times. They shaped their beliefs, they influenced their actions, not literally, unless the Greek gods are real. But they subtle, like the Greeks' belief and faith influenced their actions, and I thought that was portrayed so well in this movie, especially Athena, and the way that Christopher Nolan uses Athena, and I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, part of me does think though that yes, he kind of walks this line in seeing how faith influences action. But at the same time, also, there is magic. But undeniably, there are monsters and magic, and there is a sort of mythic religious aspect. They go to Hades, which is the depiction of it was still grounded. It wasn't as if they literally went into this creepy, Percy Jackson style underworld. It was like, it was Iceland, right? So, it was very grounded. It was a real place. But there were the dead drinking from,
and then you do have
sacrifice.
you do have Cersei turning the man into pigs, and you have
forcing
the
their faces.
Cyclops
Yeah.
in the
Yeah, so
whirlpool. Yeah.
Yeah, like there were these mythical elements. However, yeah, Athena, at least how I interpreted it, I think it's very much open to interpretation, which is one of the big strengths of this film is it doesn't explain everything to you. But Athena, I thought, was for sure like a trauma-induced vision of this girl that he saw get executed. It was a PTSD response. He was having day and night terrors of this woman sort of haunting him that he knew he was responsible for. He knew that he was the one who came up with the Trojan horse. He was the one that betrayed this sort of, I guess, Zeus's law or whatever. He's the one who betrayed that rule of hospitality. And yet, like, I don't know, that she stuck with him as Athena, yet she clearly wasn't Athena, at least in my head. I could also see, though, it could be actually her. It could be, because, the gods are in disguise is one of the rules for hospitality. You don't break the rule because it might be a god in disguise or a goddess in disguise. And so that poor girl, I guess in this universe, could have actually been Athena that they killed. Therefore, it makes sense. So I liked that ambiguity, but also I can't deny that there is already some heavy magic elements, so it's kind of difficult to also deny that the gods are influencing things because there is already all this other baggage here. But regardless, I think it was a strong choice. I think it would have really reined in the stakes and immersion of the world, is what I think.
Yeah, I'm still shocked. I'm still so pleased with how he used the figure of Athena, which I also think is just a poor girl that is a victim to, this war, and now he has to carry that guilt with him moving forward. I thought that was employed really well. But yeah, you're right. You also see the gods very much influencing and playing a role. Poseidon, out of all the gods, with the rumbling of the sea. I guess Zeus with the thunder. And once again, this is a world where there's a Cyclops, and they don't question the existence of a Cyclops. They are horrified by it because it's horrible, but they don't necessarily question it. Then you have the giant man, and you have Cersei once again turning all those men into pigs, which I thought was also a great scene. It was one of the standouts. That not just from like the technical standpoint, but like the more symbolic meaning behind it. I thought that was genius. It didn't click until I walked out, but it was done so well. But I need to rewatch that movie. I need to book another.
You definitely do. The more we talk about it, I can see you like getting more and more energized. I'm like, wow, this I love that.
It's amazing.
And I think, it is worth also talking about, though, how he handles women. Now, I've seen that. Obviously, we talked about pretty heavily in the actual book how, first of all, Odysseus just kind of sleeps around and is like, "Oh, my wife, she's so awesome." But anyways, come here, come here, Calypso. Let's make love under the moonlight. And like, he kind of sleeps with a lot of people in it that are not his wife, but he praises Penelope for being so loyal. And he's like, wow, she's just the most loyal and just encouraging wife. And it's awesome how she's not breaking our oath to go after one of these suitors. Meanwhile, he's off sailing the high seas. And I can't help but agree with some other audiences that Nolan didn't exactly remedy this. While he did remedy Odysseus by making him not sleep with other women, and also I would say kind of taming in a little bit of his pride. It did tame it in a little bit. It made that less of the forefront. In the books, he's of course saying to the Cyclops like, "I'm no one. I'm just joking. I'm Odysseus." Like, he feels a lot more hands on your hips sort of hero, and he tones him down here, but I did feel that Penelope was still the Penelope of the books, or even a little bit more flat. Not that not that she was bad, she just seemed a little bit more one note. Did you feel that as well? Or, I mean, I think on one end, it extended it with Telemachus a little bit, and there was a bit more resent for her son that I kind of liked. I liked the anger there, but we don't get as much of her interiority as we do for Odysseus. And I think there could have been some more complexity there, and that's something that I've definitely seen floating around on the internet as a common criticism with this movie is how Penelope was sort of toned down or drawn out.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that statement. She is very not emotional in the book, but she does spend a lot of time crying and sleeping. Like she
Yeah.
sleeps her sorrows away, and it is a very one-dimensional character in the book, and then you take that quality away in the movie for obvious reasons, but you don't add anything to that. So yeah, I would agree with that. You're not fixing the problem. You're kind of getting rid of the problem, but you're not replacing it with something of substance. There's one scene, the one where she does kind of bite back at Telemachus's remarks about Odysseus, and it's a great scene from an acting point of view. It didn't quite add too much, in my opinion. It didn't quite fix the problem enough just to have one scene with Penelope, and then the rest of the movie you have her kind of behind the whatever the curtain kind of area. I can see how they could have probably they missed the opportunity to do more with that. But when you're focused on Odysseus' journey as a whole, it doesn't quite take away. Like it's a valid criticism.
Yeah, I definitely think I agree with you. Like, I mean, they took away the famous bed test from Penelope, where Odysseus proves himself, and Penelope proves herself his intellectual equal, right? By saying like, move the bed. So that I think is not even a mistake though, because it would really damper the tension of the moment. It would 100% lessen the intensity if there's another step and another opportunity for Penelope to, I mean, honestly, take the spotlight away from Odysseus. So I agree with you. In an effort to expand Odysseus's interiority and give him narrative space, they really take away a lot of it from the women surrounding him. I mean, Calypso becomes pretty straightforwardly responsible for Odysseus's captivity, 100%. Athena doesn't really have any sort of divine agency because she's presented as sort of a judgmental figure where she just kind of nods or smolders at Odysseus whenever he makes a decision. So she doesn't really do anything. You have what was her name? It was an entire section of the book. It was the part of the book where Odysseus is explaining himself to the other king, and he gets a ride. Is essentially the final step after Calypso's island. That entire sequence was taken away, which I'm okay with because it doesn't really serve much of a purpose besides a narrative tool to have Odysseus tell a story. But there is the daughter, I think, of that king.
Yeah,
She's
Nausicaa.
Nausicaa. She was a super fascinating female character that had quite a bit of like angst a little bit. She had a lot of agency that we don't see at all. So it seems to me that they took away a lot of these female characters, at least a lot of their complexity in order to add that complexity to Odysseus, which I think serves the story, but definitely is an injustice to these women. That's, I think, the gist of it. I understand you got to make decisions, and you only have, especially with IMAX, a full IMAX film, you only have 3 hours. That is the maximum. With a film made on 70 millimeter IMAX exclusively, which is this is the first to do, that is the maximum length because you can't do anything longer. You would have to take time to change out the film, which would take like 30 minutes. So you would need a sizable intermission to have a film that's longer than 3 hours. And at that point, just make a miniseries. So I understand why this sacrifice needed to be made, but it is definitely worth noting. Now, what did you think about how it kind of streamlined the morality of Homer, I think, in the sense of the poem doesn't really ask us to approve of Odysseus. Homer doesn't ask us to like Odysseus or necessarily even want him to win, per se, because his pride condemns his crew. I mean, his homecoming culminates in brutal vengeance where he slaughters everybody who in the book, they have no weapons. They have nothing, and they are completely slaughtered. He nearly triggers another civil war until Athena steps in and saves him. Whereas the film really softens this and reframes it kind of like we thought would happen, where the suitors get weapons, right? Odysseus is given greater remorse. He feels bad for what he did in the Trojan War, and it makes clear with one of the few lines that Athena says that it's not necessarily Odysseus's fault, because well, he commands his men. Who commands him? Who is he? Who's responsible for Odysseus? And so it exonerates a lot of the responsibility that I think Homer definitely attributed to Odysseus in the book. It felt like his fault. Whereas even in the film where you can tell his pride gets in the way, it makes very clear that he says exactly what's going to happen, and still they go against him. It seems almost like a mutiny of sorts. So this makes it feel a lot more palatable rather than morally unsettling or challenging. And I just wanted your perspective on that. Do you think that, like, what do you think about that? Did that stand out to you, or what? Because Homer never promises us or gives us the assurance that Odysseus deserves our forgiveness. Whereas I definitely felt that Christopher Nolan wanted us to feel that way.
I definitely sympathized with Odysseus significantly more in the movie than I did in the original poem. It didn't quite stick out the way you mentioned it, but I definitely did feel that sympathy. I felt horrible for him, and then I could also empathize with his hesitance to go back home. I thought the way they explored that was fascinating. The idea that he's willingly not returning home because he's not ready to go home. It's such a shift from the poem where he desperately wants to go home, yet he can because the gods don't want him to. Here, it's more of I can't quite face who I have become and what I have done, which once again ties back to the themes explored in Oppenheimer and the themes that seem to kind of resonate more with Christopher Nolan, at least in his latest films. And it's one of the reasons why this movie really sticks out. That whole sequence where he is explaining to Penelope how Odysseus felt walking down the streets of Troy as, the city is falling all around him because of his own actions, because of his ploy, because of his, cunning and deception and utter violation of this rule of hospitality. One, phenomenal writing. Two, phenomenal, backdrop. Like, it was so epic in a haunting way. And three, Matt Damon's acting was beautiful in that scene. You could feel the pain. Like, I love Oppenheimer because of how I also feel the weight of the world, the way that Robert Oppenheimer feels after, creating this beautiful scientific creation, yet it is also the worst thing that humanity has created. But here, you feel that about a Trojan horse. and you don't think about it, because obviously this is a story, so you don't think about like the real life implications of it, but you feel them in the movie. You feel like, oh my god, this changes everything. And to have that sort of burden fall on one man, I don't know, it's quite the burden to carry, and I think I empathized significantly more with Odysseus because of it. And I think that makes this story resonate so much more. So I think it's a merit.
I completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, our one of our biggest problems with the book was we were like, why is he having a problem coming home? Because it mentions it. There's a little detail where he's like, I don't know about coming home. I'm not sure. Or like, we were asking, why does he want to come home? He didn't particularly care about his family, didn't care about his country. Like,
He was
he had
way
some
better off.
offerings.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
he
was.
was way better off. Like, there was, I mean, we didn't get that here. He was never better off. But still, we had that question of like, what is the drive? What is the problem? What is the crux of the narrative that is supposed to frame a homecoming? And kind of going off of what you said, yeah, I that scene in particular where we kind of just we understand Odysseus deeply. It reminds me a lot of, in general, this feeling that frames a lot of soldiers, especially who experience combat. You are wound up for war. This is how I've been in the archives recently, so you're gonna have to indulge me here for a second as I quote this soldier that I was researching in the archives. He was talking about, he's from World War One. He's an American soldier, and he was writing about how soldiers are wound up for war. They are cranked into a state of tension. They are trained. They are mobilized. They are told you're going to kill. They are sat waiting for the chance to get at the enemy. They are on the beaches for 10 years, right? They are waiting to unleash that rage, and then they do. But that doesn't fix it. You still have to slowly unwind that coil. You have to demobilize those people. You have to release them from that rage. Because guess what? Going and pillaging one city doesn't release them. That doesn't undo it. They are still trained for war. They still have this hunger from sitting on that beach. And so you need the homecoming. You need the slow and steady journey home. You need to process. You need what Odysseus had to face, right? That is all part of what it means to actually come home. He had to let go of what was going on in mind, in body, and spirit. He had to essentially come home on all three of those fronts, which you can see while he physically came home whenever he came to Ithaca. He arrived on the shores. He wasn't mentally home yet. He had to get rid of all of those suitors, and then finally he's home. Finally, he's able to say, let's go bury my men and do them honor. And I thought that was so fascinating because even though like Christopher Nolan isn't a scholar of this, he did nail that absolute difficulty when it comes to veterans. A lot of veterans who experience combat, especially in the modern age, don't get that process time. They don't get that time with their comrades. They don't get months and months waiting at a port or months and months at sea talking with the people they just experienced war with, having to process the rage, having to go through what the other person did or what you yourself did. You don't get that time now. Now you get on a plane, in a matter of days you are back home with your family. And that's a problem. I don't know if there's a way to fix that, but that's a problem. That's where you have soldiers immediately sleep in their closet for nights on end because they don't know what to do, right? Like it significantly hinders their mental state, which I think is so interesting. We understand PTSD better than we have ever before, even though we still have such a limited understanding of it. It's constantly growing, but we have a better understanding of it. And yet we still haven't actually altered the way we bring soldiers home to fix the fact that an isolated soldier is one who is going to be paranoid, is going to be as at risk as possible for PTSD, for post-traumatic stress disorder. They need to be surrounded. They need to have a support system. They need to process. Like, this is part of the way one comes home whole. And I don't know. I thought that was a fascinating takeaway that I, in particular, had that really made me think deeply. Less about the Bronze Age is collapsing thing. That made me laugh. But our Bronze Age is collapsing. But the deeper element there I thought was quite intellectual, just quite deep. So I agree with you. It was a merit.
I do now that you bring it up, kind of going on a bit of a tangent, but it's
Let's do it.
Now that you bring it up, it just doesn't make sense how we, like you said, we know so much about PTSD, or we know the most we've known about PTSD that we have ever. There's obviously so much more we need to figure out, so much that remains, shrouded mystery. But we certainly know enough as a society that we should have sort of a procedure or a protocol for reinstitution, or like like bringing the soldiers back. I don't know. I never thought about it that way,
I
but now
mean,
that you
they're
bring it
like
up,
they have like a psych evaluation, right? Where they're like, "Are you good?"
yeah,
But that's, I mean, come on, let's be so for
yeah,
real. Whenever your PTSD symptoms are really going to show are, I mean, obviously anyone is susceptible, but it's an individual who the most at-risk individuals are alone. They're isolated. They're going to be the most pessimistic of us, right? They are people who have addictions such as drinking or smoking or that type of thing. They have some sort of other dependency. And guess what? Our soldiers, whenever they come home from war, they've missed essentially all of being a young adult, right? If you go out as essentially a teenager and come back as a young man without any sort of connections, all of your friends from high school have moved on. What are you going to do? You're going to get a one-bedroom apartment. You're probably going to figure something else out, and you're going to be in a really dangerous position. And there are ways to maybe alleviate that to an extent, of course. So I agree with you. I mean, I have this, there's this really fascinating account from Vietnam in particular, where I think we saw this to a really, I mean, this is where we started really considering PTSD as a concept, right? You had shell shock in World War One, you had soldier's heart in the Civil War, but moving past up to Vietnam, that's when we have the introduction of PTSD that we kind of still have today. But one of these soldiers, because you would have a tour in Vietnam, everybody had tours, right? You would leave your unit by yourself, essentially, maybe with a couple other guys, and then go home for a bit, leaving the other people you're fighting with still in war. So you fly home, and there's been some fascinating accounts of saying, I'm in the jungle. A day or two later, I'm flying over my home, seeing perfect snow on the fields, Christmas lights all over the neighborhoods. They know nothing. It's as if nothing has changed here, as if nothing is going on. I land, I check out, right? I go through the small demobilization process, and I get on a bus, and I go home. And it's as if nothing has changed, as if they don't know that just a week earlier I was literally fighting in the jungle. And that's super impactful, right? But Odysseus had a whole lot of years to really process this. And even then, it took killing every last suitor. But yeah, it is such a fascinating thing that I don't think we've really given enough attention, to be honest, as a society, especially like as a military. I think there are ways to fix this, possibly. Ways that probably soldiers wouldn't like. Soldiers typically want to get home faster. They gripe about having to stay in the military for any longer than they have to. Yet it can be immensely beneficial to their psyche, I think, as a whole. Not in being in war, but in just taking time to get out of war, taking time and reintegration. But we like money, and people being in war costs money. So getting them out of that state saves us money. Unfortunately, that's the truth of it. But moving on a little bit so we can get more of what we're actually here to talk about, the Odyssey.
yes.
What else do we got? We have I mean, Telemachus as a whole. What did you think of his character? Was he elevated from the book, or did you feel like he took a back seat? I mean, most of the book is not obviously about the adventures itself. It is about this suitor storyline and what's happening with Telemachus and Penelope and the rest of Ithaca. So what did you take away? Did you notice any like significant changes? Because to me, this felt like one of the areas where I felt like the Telemachus of Nolan was pretty similar to Homer's Telemachus, but I could be missing something.
I thought he was very similar, but I noticed that he felt more straightforward. I do think there was a missed opportunity to explore more of Telemachus and his side of the story, and the whole concept of not growing up with this father figure who has achieved legendary status and coming into his own, because he really didn't do much in the movie, at least as far as I can remember. He tried to do things, but he always kept getting kind of put into his place. You know, like you know what I mean? He would stand up and then he would get put back down, which is, you know, it is kind of what happens in the book. It just in the book, because of the way Athena plays a more direct role, you do kind of get the sense that he is growing as a person and he is gaining this competence. I mean, literally, he gets imbued with confidence and his posture like increases and he speaks more calmly and whatever. But I do think it was a bit of a missed opportunity. It doesn't take away from the story. It's just a missed opportunity in this adaptation. I feel like we had the potential for more. But, you know, you can say the same about Penelope and half of the supporting cast. The film really is Odysseus, and we're following his journey. It's very character-driven in that sense. We just cut to the other characters when it benefits the story, which, duh.
Do you remember that moment when Tom Holland, who plays Telemachus, says, like, enough? You know, he shouts. He puts on his big boy voice. It really reminded me of the moment in Arthur where you know the meme with his closed fist, the Arthur closed fist meme. That's what I like pictured in my head with Telemachus being like.
It reminds me. It literally reminded me of my middle school, and there was like a bullying PSA, and they told us to say, if you know, like, enough, and like put our hand up, and that got memed to death. It's not the most practical solution. The sentiment is there. It was
funny.
But
I know, it was funny. I don't think I've ever heard Tom Holland be like really, really like, I'm putting my foot down right now. Like I've never heard
unfortunately, it made him seem more childish than he probably should have been. Which is it's unfortunate because in the story, like in the source material, the opposite happens. I mean, yeah, he's not necessarily successful, but he doesn't he goes from a child to a young adult to a man, you know. But we don't get that in the movie. But
yeah, I agree with you. Just to some extent, it really feels like Telemachus. You know, he gets bullied, decides to go see what happened to his father, finds out nothing, comes home, almost gets assassinated, finds his father, gets saved by his father, then his culminating point is killing one man and then dropping a sword for his father. That's his story. And then all of a sudden he's king of Ithaca, which I gotta mention, funniest change from the original book, because his dad goes, the Bronze Age has collapsed. We are the people of the sea. You know, the seal has been broken. All hell is about to break loose. Bye, son. Good luck.
Yeah, that's all.
Here's
that's
my
all
kingdom. He's like, he just damns his son to a collapsing empire. I thought that was so funny that he was like, I'm out. Good luck with that one. I know that I just killed all of the suitors, you know, because in the story, I don't think we're actually told that anybody is chill, that Athena has quelled the families of the suitors who got killed. We aren't told that here. So at least from the movie's understanding, he could be prepared to fight a civil war right now, and his dad just dips. Because the entire movie, though, everybody keeps reminding Telemachus that he's not Odysseus. That's like the core of it. He's not as strong. He's not as smart. He's not as agile. He's not as good of a leader. He can't do any of it. I mean, Menelaus is like, bro, you gotta just lead. If you want these guys out, you just gotta be a leader and like kick them out. And he's not able to do that. That's not what he does. His dad does it for him. And so you're right. We never see that sort of development. That seems more like a writing problem than an acting problem, of course. And I have seen a lot of conversation though about how Anne Hathaway overacts, but Tom Holland underacts. And so whenever they're together, it feels really weird. Individually, they're great. They are fantastic on their own, but they have two different acting styles that seem really like. It seems like Tom Holland doesn't react, and then
it widens
Anne Hathaway's
the gap.
just screaming out of him. Yeah,
it makes it feel like Tom Holland is not like pulling his weight, which like I personally don't think he's the greatest actor, but I don't think he's the worst either. I think he'll get there.
He's fine. Yeah.
But I will say that also kind of it didn't help that he acted against Anne Hathaway or alongside Anne Hathaway. but also against Robert Pattinson, who is amazing. He's such a good
Get these
actor.
beggars out of here.
Like he did phenomenal, and he definitely stole the show, which undermined what little we had of Telemachus to begin with. So I think that part is the detriment to the character. But aside from that, when you compensate with Odysseus' story, I think at the end of the day you can overlook that drawback, I guess, or that I don't know. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I wasn't like dissatisfied.
I agree. And I mean, what you said about Robert Pattinson is 100% true. The role of the suitors, you still have this conglomerate of suitors, which I'm happy they didn't take away. I'm happy it is still the throng.
Just
it
a bunch of people.
Yeah, a bunch of
drinking
guys
and eating
drinking who are all kind of annoying. Like,
can't take the hint that you don't want them in the house.
And I mean, how could we move on without actually mentioning? I can remember his name. I feel bad not remembering it right now. But the servant guy, he was awesome. The blind dude.
It starts with an E, right? Eunice?
Yeah, it was something.
Something with a.
Was he in the book? I don't remember.
He was the. At least I noted, because there's a footnote in the book that says that Homer really loved this character, so that there were times in the book where he would directly address this character.
Okay.
So he is.
Eumaeus. I think it just, like, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of the servants sort of slipped my mind. Whatever, most of them, but I felt like he had a much more significant role in this film as sort of both a mentor and loyal servant. And oh man, some of the most heart-wrenching moments had to do with that character. I mean, the three moments that really struck me, emotion-wise, right? Not just in general, but emotion-wise, was whenever Eumaeus finds Odysseus for the first time, or like Odysseus finds him, and he learns that Odysseus is alive. In general, that, like, daddy's home sort of feeling struck, and you have the epic line where, I mean, I don't remember exactly, but he's like, "Please bring the vengeance," and he's like,
"I'm gonna bring it all. I'm gonna bring it all.
I'll bring it all." That was so epic.
What I love that scene, because you have that one liner which is amazing, but then the way the movie's framed, he's like inside the house, and so there's like that secondary framing.
Yeah,
and when
frame within frame.
Yeah, when he steps out, it feels like the screen, the frame is widening, and it just gives you it like really lands. That stood out to me. That was such a good scene.
Man, and so his character in general was extremely sympathetic. Like, you felt so much emotion for him. That's what he was designed for within the film, and it's obvious. Like, it's obvious. You're like, he's blind, but he's loyal, and he's abused, and they take advantage of him to the extreme. They steal his animals, they kill his dogs. Like, it's obviously, you're ready to kill some suitors after that moment, and that was incredible. The second moment that was extremely emotional was the double whammy of the dog dying, which is obviously sad, which was quick. It was like the interspliced frame of the puppy, which was enough to make me feel something. And immediately the fact that is what triggers Telemachus to be like, "You're him, aren't you? You're my dad." And that whole moment, the man tears almost came. The kind of scene we've talked about quite a few times here, when Odysseus is explaining the fall of Troy, it was a surprising emotional moment. Like, nothing there is, I don't even know how to fully explain it. Nothing there is directly emotional, but just Matt Damon's acting, which, I'll be honest, I don't think Matt Damon is the best actor in the world. He's pretty one note, but he clocked it. And that section where you can see on his face the horror and the understanding that this is his fault. This is his doing. He made this possible, and he is the one person who made it possible. He came up with the idea, and just the weight of the world.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the Fallen Kingdom music video, that Minecraft parody.
Man, Captain Sparkles, yeah. Yeah.
Captain Sparkles, Christopher Nolan.
Yeah. Roughly equivalent. Yeah, I agree though. That is what it felt like. Yeah, it did capture a similar feeling.
It's like
Man, I
it's
used
like
to rule the world.
it's like Serenity, but it's not the positive connotation of
Yeah,
Serenity.
tragic Serenity.
It's more
yeah.
like an after like the aftermath. Like you have to deal with the consequences of your actions as they are unfolding, and that's a horrible feeling. And it captures that so well. I mean, we were watching that movie together the first time, and I think I gasped, and I think you also did. Like there was
I had to really like try and hold back the man tears as I was like, this is so horrible. This makes me feel so many things.
Like the way it all. Man.
Look, and I saw people online saying stuff like, well, didn't he know what happened? Like, this is what a sacking is. But knowing something is not the same as seeing it. It's not the same as experiencing it. Like, you can know something is I know one day my dog is going to die, but that's not the same as actually having your dog die. Like, that doesn't mean that I can conjure up the literal feeling of being there as he dies at the moment. It's just not. That's not how it works. And also, you can realize something is wrong as it's happening. That's kind of the whole thing of experience, the whole thing of being human. You think something is a good idea until it's not, right? And yeah, I saw that criticism. I thought that was the stupidest thing ever, and I wanted to mention it because it made me angry. It rage baited me hardcore. We have to also talk about though Odysseus's crew because we haven't touched on them at all. Himesh Patel was a standout for me. Yuri, whatever, the head guy, head boy Himesh Patel. I love him as an actor already. I have enjoyed him in everything I've seen him in. I mean, he's been in Yesterday, which I thought was really good. I'm pretty sure that's actually all I've seen him in. What else? Hey, he was in Tenet. He was in Tenet.
He was in Tenet.
Yeah. I loved him in Yesterday, the Beatles movie. That was awesome. But he really was a standout for me in the Odyssey, as you could understand what was happening. Everything made logical sense, but it was still so tragic. And I don't know. He just felt. Did he also stand out to you? He really was a huge surprise. I honestly had no idea he was even in the movie. But walking away from the film, he was one of the faces that I held on to most as like acting wise. I latched onto his performance probably more than anyone, to be honest. I really, really fell in love with what he did.
He didn't stand out to me.
That's okay.
But I thought the way like he did voice all these concerns worked for the story. I think a lot of issues that people could have brought up against the movie were directly answered by his actions and by his, literal like standing up to Odysseus and going up against his orders. I thought he was handled really well. Especially because in the book, I believe he shows up for maybe one scene, like before Cersei.
He's important though, like the one scene he's
very important, and he warns Odysseus against doing or letting his man go see Cersei.
Yeah,
but I thought he was utilized more effectively in the movie, in the adaptation, and that's all I really.
I think in particular, what I really liked is the care at which he played being second in command, at being an assisting role, where his priority was still the men. It wasn't Odysseus. Because I think sometimes you have like loyalty to a fault, where I'm so loyal to you, I'm going to do even things that harm me. And yet he played that like kind of the representative of the crew in a way where like you understood why. I mean, he was so gracious. Like he saved Odysseus's life in the Battle of Troy. I mean, we see that very clearly, and Odysseus returns the favor later. You have this sort of relationship where they've saved each other's lives, and I don't know. I think I just felt very deeply for the choices that they made, of him being so frustrated with Odysseus for sacrificing any lives at all. I mean, you had that moment where Odysseus tries to say like, "Oh yeah, go around the pool," and it's obviously baiting them to try and be like, "That's crazy. Let's go this way," knowing that they'll disobey, even though he knows that 6 men are going to die.
That was a good scene. Him being almost disgusted by Odysseus's pragmatism in that scene.
Yeah. So that's a great way to phrase it.
Yeah, I remember that.
it's it's just I think the inevitable ruin that Odysseus must feel, even though he's like, I'm gonna defy the gods, as he slowly inevitable ruin as he slowly sees all the pieces align and the men spell their own ruin despite the warning. It's just so unfortunate. Like, I don't know. I felt a lot for it. I mean, okay. We should probably talk about some of the controversies before we wrap up here. Did any of them hold true as like a problem? Obviously Elliot Page was great in it. They barely had any screen time, and I mean it was fantastic casting. Actually, fantastic casting.
I thought he was, just
such good casting.
I thought he was just really well.
I completely agree. I remember seeing people saying that he was going to be Achilles, and I don't know why.
Again, Achilles is not true. Like
I mean the armor I know people had a problem with. It was epic. Absolutely. Agamemnon was ore farming the entire time, and it was just so sick. I loved Agamemnon.
So cool.
It was so even in the rewatch, I was just in awe of the presence. And what was the other thing? Accents. That one I think we actually can talk about a bit more. Did you ever feel like you were taken out of the immersion from the accents? I think me knowing that was a controversy, it did a little bit because I was thinking about it. And when I was thinking about it, it was weird. But when I was not thinking about it, it was not a problem whatsoever. You know, with them all speaking in an American accent, using like dad and mom, and having some basic speech. In general, I thought like Nolan usually, the dialogue wasn't the strongest. At times, there were sick one-liners that felt like one-liners rather than natural dialogue. But what stood out was whenever Odysseus was like, the best view of a man is from below. Like, that's a sick line in isolation. But in the context of the conversation, it felt like, here's that line. Let me force it into the moment without actually just feeling natural. But I think that's common typically across Nolan films. I don't think his dialogue writing is necessarily his strong suit per se, but it wasn't bad.
It's one of those things where, like, as far as dialogue goes, it's not good dialogue because it's not natural dialogue. But the phrases, the things that the characters say, it feels like narration, but in a good way. I don't know how to describe it, but I'm thinking mostly of Interstellar and Oppenheimer here. So many of the lines are just like so good, iconic, and they hit the nail. They like hit the nail on the themes, and it's like, yeah, as dialogue, it's just very unnatural. Like, no person really says that. But when you look at it as a Christopher Nolan story, it's like, oh, this is the point of the movie, and it just works.
I mean, the fact that we can recall specific lines after watching it like one or two times means something. That's not normal. I think even with movies that have great dialogue, usually you can't recall specific lines that stood out. But I mean, there were multiple here that I went, oh, I want to write that down. Like, that's sick. that's like, a good one-liner.
His explanation of the Siren song was so beautiful. It's so good.
Yeah.
And when Calypso advises Odysseus to you know just give in to the storm, like let it carry you. That was a great sequence. That was a great line. The bring it home. I'm gonna bring it all. I defy the gods. And then there's a line at the end that I don't fully remember, which is a shame because I remember as I was watching it, I thought, oh, this is amazing. So I really do need to rewatch the movie. It's like the final line about how, like, years from now they'll remember that they might be able to forget our mistakes. Something like that. I thought at the moment it hit the nail. But I'm not entirely sure what he said.
There was just so many ore farming lines. I think is the best way to say it, where it was like, the contest is over, everyone has tried and failed, and he was like, I haven't. Like, that was just, you get chills immediately. And the usage of the bow.
We gotta talk briefly about the soundtrack, the score. The
It
score is
was,
so
I think it was
amazing.
understated in the perfect way, in my opinion. I've seen some people say it's not as strong as Oppenheimer. I think on the whole I'd agree, but that's because in Oppenheimer it played such a central role. Like it was one of the stars of the show. But for the Odyssey, it was a supporting member. It was not one of the main characters. It was a supporting member, with the exception of how it played with the bowstring, with the like the draw fire, the dong. It like it's a harp. I mean, you saw it multiple times, and just this weird honor, not weird honor, but this sort of honor Odysseus has, and you can understand why the Trojan horse felt like such a betrayal of that honor whenever he's hunting, like whenever he was hunting game on Circe's island. That to me stood out. I didn't realize this the first time I watched it, just because I don't know, there was so much going on. I was really focused on his men getting turned into pigs. But whenever he's hunting and about to find out that all of the funny animals on the island are people, are men, he's about to take a shot. Him and his men are starving to death. Things are dire. And still, he pauses, thinks about it, and draw fires the bow in order to give the prey a chance, to give it a battle. I was like,
And he
dang.
he does it. He does it too with the boar, right? At the in the
Yeah.
flashback sequence.
Yes. Yeah, that's like the first time he does it, because that's like
Yeah.
where they establish this rule. And then to know, 'cause I guess I didn't necessarily put this fully together the first time I watched it, how that played a role. And the first time I watched it, I was just in awe of how epic it was, to be honest. But the second time, noticing like, oh no, that's his call for battle. That's him saying, we're about to fight. Like things are about to go down. It is giving them a fair shot, is what he's doing. And putting that into context with the final test, that final moment where he draw fires it, and you know it's about to happen. It just made it all the more epic.
I did
But
not
I didn't really
pick up on
notice that. No, I didn't. I didn't the first time, but the second time it clicked. And the soundtrack is that. Like that is the soundtrack. And I think that's important to note. That is baked into the soundtrack. It's not random. It's in the flow of the music. Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned the soundtrack. I forgot to mention. There's just so much here. It's 3 hours long, and we probably missed a lot, but excellent mention. How did you think it compared to Oppenheimer? Because I liked Oppenheimer more with the music, but this was really unique. It was not an auditorial experience I've had before.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a fair comparison because the music serves different purposes in both stories. And yeah, I enjoy the Oppenheimer score so much more. Like, because again, like you said, it's one of the stars of the movie. It carries the movie in many ways. It plays such a vital role in Oppenheimer. But it also plays a vital role in the Odyssey, especially, the drawing the bow. But the use of synths, it evokes the feeling of like waves washing over you. And there's this sense once again of not necessarily serenity, but like the silence after the storm. The aftermath, where you contemplate just exactly what you have done and how horrible it is, and you're left with nothing but your thoughts. That you can't drown your thoughts. I thought the soundtrack was really effective in making you feel that way. And it took me a bit to be able to like even remotely kind of describe how it felt, but that's the best way I can describe it. And I thought it worked wonders.
I mean, I think that shows the merit of what it achieved. Because to me, one of the biggest things about film, about art in general, is it's able to accomplish something you can't describe in a word, right? Because what you're saying, that feeling after a horrible event has happened where you're left with the broken pieces, yet it's not serenity, but it's like serenity, where it's quiet and you contemplate, but it's not necessarily good. You're left with that emptiness inside. There is no actual word for that. I mean, maybe there is.
Maybe
sure
the Germans have one. They have
I'm
a
sure.
word for it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they have a word for everything.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because what they do is they just like eliminate the spaces and string a ton of words together.
Yeah.
But
it's like cheap.
yeah, it's fake news. That's not real. No, but you like the complexity of that emotion we felt it while watching the film, and that's not something you can just convey through a few sentences. It might take a whole book. It might take a movie. It takes a score. It takes the perfect, I guess the perfect craft of a multitude of people coming together to fashion a piece of art, and
that's why we have decided to reframe the podcast, rebrand it, expand our horizons.
Exactly, because we like to talk about movies too. I'll be honest with everybody.
We love movies.
We love movies, and we've snuck them in a little bit here or there.
We've underplayed how much we love movies.
And we have also underplayed how much we've watched movies. I mean, we initially connected on the basis of film.
We took multiple film classes. Yeah. There were semesters where we watched like 4 to 5 movies every week. I can go on Letterboxd, and I have the proof.
And that's why, yeah, it is kind of crazy. We would just randomly be like, let's watch a movie today, and go at like
it was beautiful. Highlight of
while some people would, stay up and drink all night, we would just go watch lots of movies. But that's the core of Frame and Fiction, is combining our love for movies and for books. So as we start this reframing process, if you're joining us for the first time, that's awesome. We are previously known as Novels and Nightcaps, but now we are Frame and Fiction, because we are shedding the cloak of just books, and we're expanding into movies as well, because we kind of just want to talk about whatever we want to talk about, and that involves any type of storytelling. That involves comics, that involves novels, that involves movies and TV and miniseries and really whatever
maybe even video games eventually. I don't know.
That's actually sick. That's a great idea. I haven't even considered that. So
any story we're telling or talking about. Exactly.
And we want to dive into what makes them good or what makes them fall flat. And so that really is the crux of why we decided to reframe into Frame and Fiction. But I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we don't have drinks to finish anymore, but I guess we haven't really talked about how to end this thing. I guess we end it by saying goodbye. Just for now, but not forever. Everybody.